Hey there! So enough talking about security, about various ways we could use to grant access to a data lake. Let's move on. So let's say that you develop your wonderful pipelines in Azure Data Factory and you would like to deploy them to UAT or PROD environments. So how to do this? Or how to collaborate with other team members? Well, that's the topic for today, so let's get started. Alright, so let's talk about CI/CD for Azure Data Factory. And now, this topic is not in scope of the exam, so if you are just preparing for the exam, you can skip it. But from my experience, I know that this is a pretty important topic, because I saw projects in case of which this CI/CD stuff was either not configured at all, and changes were moved manually to production, or which first of all might introduce human errors, and secondly, is not repeatable, and finally, it needs elevated permissions for developers on prod, which usually we don't want to have. Or I also encountered projects in case of which this CI/CD stuff was configured, but it didn't follow best practices. So it could have been improved. So that's why I decided to talk about this. Also, you as a data engineer, you will work with Data Factory on a daily basis. And I want to make sure that your experience with working with ADF will be the best. So I want to make it as easy for you as possible. That's why I'm covering this topic. And basically, there are two ways we could implement those CI/CD pipelines. The first method I will talk about today is based on Azure Resource Manager templates. That's the stuff, that's the method that is described in Microsoft documentation. It works, but it has some issues. I will talk about them later on. And in future episodes, I will show you the alternative approach, the one that I prefer, that was created by Microsoft MVP Kamil Nowinski, and this solution is superior in every aspect compared to the Microsoft one, but that's something that I will cover in future episodes. But I want to present you those two approaches so you could choose which one you want to use. And today I will focus only on a developer experience. So I have this CI/CD stuff already configured in my environment, and I will show you how to use them, how to develop, how to deploy your pipelines on various environments. And then in future episode, I will show you how to set it up from scratch. So let's move on. All right, CI/CD. So you should remember that in case of Data Factory, we can configure it in two ways. It can be either configured with Git repository, or it is not configured. It depends on us. So actually, let's jump into Azure portal and I will show you how it looks like. So previously, during my videos, I worked in a mode in case of which a repository was not configured. It's easier to start with, but generally, and that's the place where you can set it up, this source control tab, and then you have various settings available. In general, you want to have a repository configured in your Data Factory instance. And there are many reasons to do so. So first of all, your code is versioned, so you can see history. You can see who made what change. You can easily revert to some previous version if the newest change introduced some issues. You can collaborate with other team members. You can work as a group on the same feature in an easy way. You can use those best practices from programming world like code reviews and pull requests to verify that the quality of your code is good enough. You can easily configure CI/CD pipelines so the process of deployment will be pretty much automatic. And finally, in this mode, when you have a repository configured, you can just work independently from other developers on your feature branch, And even if your code doesn't work yet, maybe you didn't set all properties that are required, you can still save it and resume working on it the next day. In case of Data Factory which doesn't have this Git integration enabled, all of those features, they don't exist. So it is highly recommended to turn it on, even if you're the only developer in the project. And in the future episode, I will show you how to do this. Anyway, on my environment, this stable ADF instance of Data Factory, it has Git configured. It is integrated with Git. And that's the instance that I will treat as my development environment. Apart from that, I have a second instance of Data Factory called PROD Data Factory table. And that's the one that I will treat as my production instance. And this one, it doesn't have a repository configured. And that's a best practice. You should configure repository only on your development instance. So actually, let's start drawing our flow. So it looks like this. So we have our development Data Factory. So this is ADF, and this is our, let's say, dev environment, the one that we as developers use to develop our code. And I told you that we want to configure it with a code repository. So this is Git. And on dev, we want to set this configuration. And I will show you later on how to do this. Then inside our Git repository, and in my case, I'm using Azure DevOps as my code repository, you will have various branches. And the one branch that is most important is the collaboration branch. And basically, this is the branch to which various developers will push their code that is already treated as a verified, as tested. So in my case, this branch is called main. And let me mark it that this is our collaboration branch. So that's the most important branch out there. So let's say that I'm a developer and I would like starting working on some new feature in ADF. Let's say I want to add a new pipeline, new data set, whatever. So what I would do, I would simply create a new branch based on my main branch. So this is our feature branch, this purple stuff. Feature branch. And then inside this feature branch, I will simply add my changes. I will create new pipelines, new data sets, I will add some logic, and so on. But I will work on my feature branch that is separate from our collaboration branch, and that's pretty important. What is also super important is to make sure that developer working on the feature branch, it uses the debug mode that I was talking about previously to verify that the stuff that he is implementing, it works. So this is super crucial to debug and test the code on the feature branch. And later on, I will show you how to do this. And I know that not everything can be tested in this way, but you should test as much as you can. Then, once the developer is satisfied with all the changes that were done in scope of feature branch, what he does is to create a pull request to the collaboration branch, to the main branch. So this is a pull request. So basically, it means that developer says, hey, my part of the code has been tested by me. I believe that it is good enough to be merged into our main branch and then deployed to various environments. But just to verify that everything works, what is done during the pull request is simply a code review. Code review. So someone else, some other developer, maybe a tech lead, will check what changes were introduced by the feature branch and verify whether they match the company standards. whether various patterns are met, maybe some naming conventions, whether various properties were set properly, and so on. And if the code is good, then it will be approved. If not, it will be rejected, and the developer would have to fix those changes, and then the code review will be done again, up to the point where all the comments or issues were solved. What could be also done is that we could link, or we could force linking every pull request to some work item. So if you use Azure DevOps as your main tool, so it has many purposes. So first of all, you could use it as a code repository. That's what I'm doing right now. But you could also use it to track your project progress. You could create their user stories and tasks. And here you might enforce that every pull request is linked with a specific work item, with a specific task or user story. So it is later on easier to track dependencies and see in context of what change this particular piece of code was developed. It's not required, but it is suggested to do this, just for this traceability. Then what also could be configured is that all comments inside our pull request have to be resolved, like resolve comments. So there might be a case where the pull request approver will have some questions about the code. So this person will create some comment or questions inside the pull request. And basically the policies defined on our repository will not allow the merge to happen if there is any unresolved comments. So that's a way to make sure that all issues were addressed. Anyway, once the change has been approved, it will be merged into the main branch. And one important thing to note is that usually we want to protect our collaboration branch. So I will draw a padlock here. So it means that basically the only way to make changes in our main branch is to do it via pull requests. It is not possible to make direct changes, just bypassing this review process. Anyway, once the pull request has been approved and merged into the main branch, what happens is that automatically a CI/CD process starts that we defined on our repository. And what happens automatically? So the first thing that will be done will be to build our deployment package. Build package. And it means that Azure DevOps, our pipeline, will grab the code that existed in the main branch at the time we approved the pull request, and it will create a deployment package from it. In case of Data Factory, it will simply be a Azure Resource Managed template, just a JSON file with some parameters. Then the next stage in our pipeline will be like this. Let's take this package that we just built and let's deploy it automatically to dev live Data Factory, to live dev ADF. All right, but what is this live dev ADF? So when we configure our Data Factory to work in Git integration mode, we have two, let's say, versions of it. One that shows the stuff that exists in our code repository, and I will show you in a second how it looks like. And secondly, we have a live version of it that simply shows the stuff that is actually deployed to our Data Factory instance. So previously, without the Git integration, what we did to deploy the stuff was to click this publish button, and we had to do this manually. Here, it happens automatically. So basically every change that has been merged into the main branch will be automatically deployed to our dev environment, which means that our dev environment will be pretty much always in sync with our collaboration branch, and that's pretty awesome. Then, once we are happy with the changes on dev environment, maybe there were some additional tests performed on this environment, what we want to do is to grab the same package that was built and deployed on dev environment and deploy it to other environments. And here, for simplicity, let's assume that we deploy directly to prod. Deploy to prod ADF. And what is important here, that in this approach, we are making sure that we deploy basically the same code that was deployed previously. Because we are deploying the same package that we built. Which is a super thing, because we are sure that we are deploying basically the same stuff that we tested on dev environment and maybe on some UAT environment as well. Obviously, to make it work, we would have to parameterize our package somehow. So for example, parameters. So for example, if we have linked services, and usually we have, then on dev environment, they will point to a different database, to a different data lake than on prod. But that's fine. By using parameters, we can make sure that those linked services and other things as well, they have values that are valid in scope of proper environments. Parameters. But that's the only change that can be done between environments. The code base, the package that is used for deployment, is basically the same. What else we could do is to make sure that actually we don't want to automatically deploy every change to production, because it might have impact on business. So we might want to define an approver. So someone who will receive a notification whenever there is a request to deploy something into prod, and this person will decide if we want to deploy it or not. So this is a kind of a gatekeeper that protects our prod environment. And basically, that's a very basic flow that I have configured in my environment, and now I will show you how it looks like in action. All right. So let's jump to Data Factory, and I will create a new feature branch. I will implement some new functionality, and then I will deploy it to dev and production environments. So let's start. And as you can see on the diagram, the first thing we should do when working in this model is to create a feature branch from our main branch. So let's do this. So again, I'm in our development instance of Data Factory, this table ADF, and here you can see that actually this is an indication that I'm working in a Git integration mode, because here in this drop down, I can select the branch from the repository of which contents will be displayed in the UI. And right now I'm connected to the main branch, our collaboration branch, but what I want to do is to simply create a new branch for my feature. So let's do this. And let's call it like feature, I don't know, feature 1, or whatever name will work in your case, whatever naming convention you use. And I want to base it on the main branch. And command the create button was grayed out for some reason. Sometimes UI has some issues. Feature 1, feature 1, like so. Let's create it. And now I'm working in the context of my feature branch, so the UI shows only those objects that exist in my branch. So let's say that I want to create a new pipeline, I want to make a very simple change here, just to show you the behavior. Let's call it CI/CD demo, like so. And let's add a very simple activity. The one that I like to use is simply await because it doesn't require any configuration. And let's add some description like added as a part of feature 1. Then the next thing we discussed in our flow was to make sure that this code works. So what developer would do, obviously I would like to save my changes to not lose them. And right now it translates to a commit to my feature branch. And actually I can show it to you. So let's go to my repository. I'm in Azure DevOps, inside my Data Factory repository. And here I should see my commit somewhere obviously in my feature branch. Yeah. So we can see this new commit, adding pipeline CI/CD demo. Because I clicked save button in the UI, and because I have my ADF integrated with the repository, it automatically converted to a commit inside a repository. Alright, so before I create a pull request, I would like to make sure that my stuff works. So what developer should do would be to use the debug functionality just to verify on his feature branch that the stuff actually works. Now, in my case, the change is pretty simple, so it has to work. It is just a wait activity. But let's pretend that I had some more advanced changes and they are fine. They work just fine. So what I would like to do right now, following our diagram, is to create a pull request to the main branch. Because right now, my CI/CD demo pipeline, it exists only inside my feature branch. It doesn't exist in our main branch, and it doesn't exist in the live dev ADF. And actually I can prove it that if I switch to our main branch, that my CI/CD demo pipeline, it doesn't exist because this change hasn't been merged yet. Likewise, if I switch to a live mode, so that's a version that shows the stuff that is actually deployed to this instance of Data Factory, here this CI/CD demo pipeline, it also doesn't exist because it is done, it was added only in my feature branch. And here we can see it. So to make sure that it is available in our main branch and later on in the dev live environment, I would have to create a pull request. So let's do this. And I will use this create pull request option. So let's do this. And it redirects me to Azure DevOps. And let's fill this form to create just a regular pull request like with every other stuff in Azure DevOps. So let's add a title like feature 1. And if I had a work item, I would link it here. I might indicate required reviewers. It depends on our policies that we defined in Azure DevOps. But for now, let's just create this pull request. So right now the pull request to merge my changes into the main branch is active. The approver that is assigned to review this stuff will get a notification. And in this case, I will just simply approve it as myself. Usually it is not a best practice because we want a second pair of eyes to check our code. But right now, for simplicity, I will do it on my own. And obviously I can see all the changes that were made in context of this pull request. In our case, we just added this very simple CI/CD demo pipeline and its code is deployed here. So the change is fine. So let's approve it. And then let's complete our pull request. Usual stuff when we work with DevOps. And now, usually, we would like to have some approver different than the author to approve this stuff. But again, for simplicity, and because I'm the admin of this DevOps instance, I will override those policies and I will say, I can do this. So I'm the boss. So I can override it. All right. So basically what I did was to review the code that was delivered in this feature 1 branch. And I said, okay, it is fine. It meets our coding standards and it can be merged into our main branch. And actually, that's what happened. The merged happened already when I clicked complete the pull request. And what happens right now automatically, if we take a look at our diagram, so we are here, we did the pull request. So right now our CI/CD process should start automatically because I have configured it in a way that it looks for changes done on our main branch. So let's see if this is true. So I have in DevOps, in Azure DevOps, a pipeline defined called Data Factory that is, as you can see, already running because it detected a change done in the main branch. And actually, it already finished the first stage. And right now it is on the second stage. It's doing something. So let's take a look inside this pipeline. So the first stage, the first thing this pipeline does is to build our package, is to create this artifact that contains all the code, this ARM template of our data factory that you want to be deployed on various environments. And actually, we can see the code, the artifact here because we published this artifact. So if I click on it, I can see exactly what is a part of our package. And basically, this is the most important stuff because that's the JSON file that contains a code for our data factory. It also has a file that contains some parameters to be used in the context on this environment. But for parameterization, we'll get back to this in the next episode. Anyway, deployment on dev is in progress. We can see exactly how it goes. And actually, right now it already finished. So on dev environment, we can see this green tick mark. It says that, hey, I already deployed your changes. So everything that was a part of this main branch should be already available automatically on our live dev environment. So let's verify it. So I am back in our dev and data factory. Let's switch to Azure, to Data Factory live mode that displays the stuff that is actually being deployed. And here, yep, I can see my CI/CD demo pipeline that contains our wait activity. So it means that our change has been automatically deployed to dev environment without any human intervention. Obviously, except for reviewing and approving pull request. But that's something that we want to happen because we want to make sure that someone takes a look at the code. So right now we are here. So we deployed the stuff to dev environment. Let's say we tested it and we are happy with the way it works. So we would like to promote it to production environment. And in my case, I configured this approver, a person who has to take a look at those changes and verify if they are fine to go to prod at this moment. Maybe we want to postpone this deployment till evening, so it won't be done during the business hours. Depends on our case. So let's take a look at our deployment pipeline. That's the one, and you can see that it is waiting. So the pipeline built the package, deployed it to dev instance, the dev environment, and it now waits. And it waits for approval, because that's how I configured my environment. So let's review the deployment. I would say, all right, it is fine to deploy it to prod. Please go. And actually, right now, it is deploying this change to production environment. But before it finishes, let's quickly jump into it. That's the prod environment. And let's verify that this CI/CD pipeline, it should be somewhere here, it doesn't exist yet, because it's a pretty new change, so it doesn't exist on production environment. And that's what we want to do right now. We want to deploy it to prod environment. So let's wait for a second to see how it goes. All right, so I'm back. The deployment has finished on production environment. It took like 90 seconds. And let's verify on prod environment whether this time our demo CI/CD pipeline is available. So let me refresh the contents, and yes, it exists on our prod environment. That's the change that we just introduced. So that's the very basic flow that allows you to easily deploy changes in an automatic way between various environments without human intervention. So let's say that we would like to continue working in this way. Let's add another feature, and basically it would work in pretty much the same way. So let's say that we have another change request to be done, another feature to be implemented. And what would the developer do? Well, would be to simply follow exactly the same steps. So he will create a new feature branch. Let me call it feature branch 2. He would make some commits there. Then he will test this stuff locally using the debug mode. And then the pull request would be made to the main branch that would be approved. And once it is merged into main branch, CI/CD will kick off. That will follow those 3 stages, like let's build a package, then deploy it to dev, and then deploy it to prod. Upon approval, obviously, because for prod, we don't want to deploy it automatically. So let's quickly create the second feature branch with some additional change to show you how it looks like. So let's move back to our dev instance of Data Factory. Let's switch back to our Git mode, and let's create a brand new branch, because I want to have a separate branches for various features. So let me call it feature, like feature 2. And again, I want to base it on our collaboration branch, on our main branch, because that's the version that contains changes from various developers. That's the code based on which deployments are made. All right. So I'm in the feature 2 branch, and let's say that actually I would like to make additional changes to our CI/CD demo pipeline. So let's say I want to add additional wait task, and let's combine them, add it as a part of feature 2. Let me save it. Yes, so it results in a commit to our repository. Let me debug it locally to verify that it works just fine. And again, it will, because it's a very simple change. We just added a new wait activity just to simulate some real life change. All right, and the debug went fine. So what I would do right now as a developer, again, I will create a pull request to our main branch. So let me call it feature 2. Let's create the pull request. And now me as an approver, I would review the stuff, what was made. I will check for any conflicts. Maybe I will add some comments. So basically, if you feel that actually this description is not correct, so I would like to comment on it, you would just create a new comment here. Please change the description or whatever, right? And now the developer would get this message that actually there is some comment about my pull request, and actually at this moment I can't complete my pull request because there is some comment that hasn't been resolved, and you can see it here. So then me as a developer, I would either fix this and add some additional changes to my pull request, or just ignore it if this description is actually fine. So let's pretend that I fix it, and let's resolve this comment. So right now our requirements are met, so the pull request can be approved, and then let's complete it. And again, I will simply override the policies, because usually it should be someone else who is doing the approval process than the author. All right, so we merged the code into the main branch, which again triggers our pipeline. So if we go back to our pipelines, you can see again that it is running. And it is running because, well, we just merged our feature 2 into the main branch. So DevOps detected that, hey, there is some new change, and I have to build a package based on it, and I have to deploy it to dev environment. And again, please take a look how nice this process is, how easy it is to work by multiple developers on the same data factory, even when they are working on different features. Because once they created their changes and they just merged it into the main branch, they can be sure that they will be in a few seconds automatically deployed to data factory. So every developer working on the same data factory will see those changes, and the other developers can just pull those changes to their own feature branches just to avoid some conflicts. So basically, it makes sure that our development process of data factory, it is quite similar to the patterns that we used in case of more traditional languages like C# or Java or whatever you use. And then based on our requirements, we could choose the branching strategy that works in our case. Right here, I'm using a very simplified strategy with just 2 types of branches, the main one, that is our collaboration branch, and feature branches. But in many cases, it is fine, it is enough. So my advice is start with this basic approach and see if it works in your case. If not, then just add some additional layers, maybe some additional branches per environment, whatever works in your case. But start simple, and let's just not overcomplicate it. All right, in the meantime, we can see that this change has been deployed to dev environment. It is waiting for approval on prod. So let's verify on dev live environment if the change is there. And yes, our second change has been deployed. That was added as a part of the second feature. Great. So everything works fine, right? So pretty much, except for a case when we find a bug in production and we have to do something about it. So let's talk about hotfixes, how to handle them in this scenario. So right now, we are here at this moment. So we deployed our feature branch 2 into dev environment. It is not yet on prod. On prod right now, what we have is the version that was deployed here as a part of feature 1 deployment process. And unfortunately, someone found a bug here in production and you have to fix it. So how to do this? So basically it depends. It depends on how critical this bug is. If it is not that critical, if it can wait a bit, then what we will do is to treat the fix as just a new feature. So we will create a new feature branch. It will be a feature branch 3 that contains a fix, and we'll simply follow the same process as in case of regular changes and just do it in the same way. So we'll create a new branch, implement a fix, debug it, merge, and then deploy it. Alright, but what if this bug is super critical and we cannot wait maybe 2 weeks until this changed, developed in a regular mode, will be deployed to production, and we have to do it today? And well, it might be a kind of a tricky, because we cannot create a new branch based on the main branch, so we cannot deploy the feature branch 3 right now to production, because it contains the stuff that was merged as a part of feature branch 2. And feature branch 2, it doesn't exist yet on production. And maybe we don't want to deploy feature branch 2 at this moment. We just want to deploy a fix for this bug that was found on prod. So we have to follow a slightly different approach. So again, we have to create a feature branch, as always, but we will not base it on the current state of our main branch, because it might contain too many changes, and in our case it does. So what we'll do is to create a branch based on the code that was used to generate a package that was eventually deployed to production. And in our case, it is this change. It is this merge commit to the main branch that triggered the pipeline, which eventually led to production deployment. So what we'll do would be to create a hotfix branch, but not from the main branch, but from this particular commit, from this particular code version. So we will be sure that we'll be working on the code version that was actually deployed to production. And in a second, I will show you how to find this version, but let's get back to our drawing. So let's say that we implemented the fix, we tested it locally, it works, and how to deploy it. If we just merged the pull request, this hotfix branch, into the main branch, well, at this moment, it won't be a good approach, because it would work like this if we just merge it to the main branch. The main branch, obviously, it will trigger the CI/CD, but the package built from the main branch, it would again contain too many changes. So what we'll have to do instead would be to run our CI/CD process manually. That's the exception. Usually we want to happen automatically, but in the case of this hotfix, we'll do it automatically. And we will say, hey, dear DevOps, please run our CI/CD pipeline, the same one that we used previously, that does all those 3 stages. But this time, do not run it from the main branch, but run it from our hotfix branch. So what will happen is that it will follow those 3 stages. It will build our deployment package, it will deploy it to dev, and then to prod, upon approval, obviously. And then the situation on prod should be fixed, because we deployed the fix. And finally, what we'll have to do would be to merge our hotfix branch to the main branch to make sure that it is available in our main branch, so any future changes will not overwrite our hotfix. So that's the pattern. So let's see it in action, how it could be done. All right, so what we have to do first is to determine which code version should be used to create our hotfix branch. And in case of Azure DevOps, what I used was to use something called environments. And I defined two environments. One that I use when we're doing the deployment to dev environment, and one for prod. And actually, let me show you how it looks like and where to find it. So in our DevOps, you can see this environments tab here. And I have two environments created, one for dev and one for prod. In my pipeline, I'm referring to them. There are some additional settings I could use to define or to configure our environment. For example, in case of production environment, I have a additional check implemented that actually this deployment has to be approved by me before it can proceed. But what is important is that actually, if I click on this environment, I can see all deployments that happened on this environment. So it is very easy for me to see what and when was deployed on this environment. And in our case, we know that basically we want to create a hotfix branch based on the latest code version that exists on prod. And the latest one, well, that's the one. That's the pipeline that was recently executed that deployed our feature 1. And if I click on this link, I will see exactly my pipeline run, the deployment pipeline, and I can see the commit ID, which indicates which code version was used to create our build artifact, our code that was deployed. And if I click on it, I can see again what changes were made there. And yes, it was the time where we added this CI/CD demo pipeline. So for sure, that's the code that we should use as a base for our hotfix branch. So what I will do right now is to copy this code identifier, this commit ID, like so. And let's try to create a new hotfix branch based on this particular commit. So I'm back in my development instance of Data Factory. Let's switch to DevOps mode and let's try to create a new branch. So new branch. The problem is that in case of ADF UI, we cannot indicate a commit. We have to use a branch. And in our case, it won't work. So in this case, we have to use a different tool to create a branch based on a specific commit. And in our case, I will just use Azure DevOps. So I switched to branches tab. I can see our two feature branches. I can see our main branch. And actually, I will create a brand new branch. But this time, actually, let's call it hotfix feature 1 fix. And this time, instead of using a branch as a base for our branch, I will switch it to a commit. So actually, let's switch to a commit tab and let me paste the commit that I copied, like so. So the branch has been created in a proper version, hopefully. And then if I go back to Azure Data Factory, I should see this branch already. It should be created. And yes, I can see my hotfix branch. So let me switch to it. And yes, what is the code version that I see right now? Well, that's the version that was used to deploy to production. And you should remember that it should contain only the change that was introduced as a part of feature 1. So we see only this first wait activity. There is now the second one that was added as a part of the second activity. So let's implement a hotfix. Hotfixed. Let's say that That's the change that we have to do. Let's save it. Let's debug it just to practice those best practices. And let's say that the hotfix works just fine. All right, so the change is ready in our hotfix branch. So what do we have to do right now? Well, we don't want to create a pull request, at least not yet, not at this moment. We want to run our CI/CD process manually from our hotfix branch. So how to do this? So again, let's switch to our pipelines in Azure DevOps. Let's go to our Data Factory pipeline and let's run it manually, like so. And here, let's indicate from which code version this pipeline should run. And by default, it runs from our main branch, from our collaboration branch. But I want to change it to use our hotfix. So let's do this, like so. And right now, our pipeline is being executed. It follows exactly the same steps as previously. It will first build the package, then it will automatically deploy it to dev, and then once approved, it will deploy it to prod. So let's wait for a second until it is deployed on dev. Alright, so our hotfix pipeline has finished deployment on dev. So let's verify on dev environment what is available there. So let me switch to the live mode. And in our CI/CD demo pipeline, what we see? Well, that's the version of the code that contains the change that was added as a part of feature 1 with our hotfix. So that's what we want to promote to production. So let's say that this code, it passed some additional tests on dev environment, and we would like to move it to production. So let me go back to our pipeline, CI/CD pipeline, and let's approve for production deployment. So right now, this hotfix will be deployed to prod, and I will be back in just a minute or two. All right, so the pipeline has finished deployment. So let's verify on production environment how it looks like. So I am back in our prod ADF. Let me refresh the view and let's see what is deployed. And we can see in our CI/CD demo pipeline that yes, it contains the hotfixed version. So we made it. We deployed the hotfix to production. All right, so what we would like to do next, just to make sure that our hotfix is not overwritten in future deployments, would be to finish this pull request to the main branch, which will trigger the regular pipeline. So actually, let's do this. So let's go back to our dev instance of Data Factory. Let's go to our feature branch that contains our hotfix, and let's create a pull request from it to the main branch, like hotfix for feature 1. Yeah, and let's merge it. Let's review and approve, and let's complete it. All right, so the change has been merged, and a new pipeline should be triggered right now. And yep, it just started. That contains all the changes that we've done so far. Feature 1, feature 2, and our hotfix. All right, but what about this pipeline run? That was started at the time we merged feature 2 into our main branch. So it is this pipeline. So what about this? Well, please be aware that this code version, this build package, it doesn't contain our hotfix. So if we allow it to be deployed to production, well, it will overwrite our hotfix and the bug will be available again. It will be created again. So no, we don't want to deploy this this pipeline. So what I will do would be just to, actually I can say during the review, no, the hotfix is not included. and just reject it. Alright, so it has been rejected. So for sure, this code will not be deployed to production. So if we would like to deploy eventually feature 2, what we could do is to either use this pipeline, this code that was built as a result of hotfix merge into the main branch, or just create yet another feature branch with some additional changes and do the version that was deployed here, whatever works in our case. Now, this stuff is being deployed right now on dev environment. So in a few seconds on dev, what we should see, it should be those 3 changes: feature 1, feature 2, and the hotfix. So everything combined. So let's wait a second and let's see if this is true. If yes, then we'll have a clean environment that contains everything that was developed so far. Alright, and it completed. So let's jump to the live mode on Data Factory on dev. And in our CI/CD pipeline, we can see both of our wait activities. And the first one, well, it is hotfixed. So this is a proof that actually our Data Factory in dev, well, it contains all the stuff it should have. And it also means that our main branch at this stage, at this moment, it contains all those changes. Change from feature 1, from feature 2, and from our hotfix. And one more thing that I want to show you are those parameters that actually our data factories, they differ between environments. Even though they were deployed using the same code, there are some differences that have to be applied. Alright, so on our dev environment, let's just take a look at this ADLS, a linked service. So on dev environment, it points to my table data lake storage account. And it should work on dev. Hopefully, yep, it works. But on prod environment, that's my prod. Obviously, I don't want to use the same dev data lake. I want to use a different one. So I have the same linked service defined, but this time it points to a prod data lake table data lake, so a different instance. And here it should work as well. Yep, it works. So that's a proof that we can indeed parameterize our deployments between various environments. And I will show you how to do it in the next episode. Alright, so to summarize, it was a quick demonstration how a very basic CI/CD flow could look like when using Data Factory. And you should see already how helpful it will be for you as a developer to automatically deploy various changes to various environments. How you can enforce a better code quality by using code reviews, by using pull requests. How you can control what is being deployed to which environments by using this approval process. How easy you can see what was actually deployed on a specific environment, so in case there is some bug found, you can easily create a fix for it. So please compare it with your way of working that you use in Data Factory, and if you still do it manually, or if you struggle with any of the tasks that I presented today, then, well, think if you really want to continue working this way, or maybe if you would like to switch to a more mature way. And in a future episode, I will show you how to set it up from scratch. And it is pretty simple. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Take care.